did Carlos show you the laptop that we're getting supposedly?
That we are getting?
Well, there's a good chance that I will also buy it, but I'll just modify mine differently.
Because we were both looking at new laptops together.
I'm intrigued.
Yeah, we're both
I have not seen it.
Yeah, we were both looking at laptops together. No, it's okay. We were both looking at laptops together, and there's really robust one that I'm excited about getting. Let me show you.
How much is it?
Oops.
Because it's from that one website where you can customize laptops.
There are several websites.
That's every. That's 50% of the websites. I'm sorry.
It's exotic. It's called exotic.
No, it's okay.
PC.
I'm not trying to be. I'm not trying to be. I was I'm having I was sitting there when you said that. I'm like, do I say it and seem like I'm being a jerk, or I'm not trying to be a jerk? I just don't know.
I get it. But yeah, it's a website that will customize stuff for you, and it's a Sager.
Sager numbers.
Yeah, but Carlo tells me it's freaking robust and overkill.
Oh, Sager makes good good builds. Yeah, Sager's
really
good
stuff.
Carlo tells me it'll be overkill for all my games, which I'm very excited about.
It has a 2060 in it, Andrew.
Not bad. Not bad at all. That's a laptop quality laptop.
I know. I think we know what. As opposed
to a toaster quality laptop, because you and I both know.
Because up to this point, the laptop was not the one overkilling my games. The game's the only one's overkilling my laptop. So
true facts.
So I'm excited to get a new one. Very excited. So Carlo, you might get the same one, but smaller. Because I ordered a 17-inch one.
You already ordered it?
Well, I mean, hopefully it's already being ordered, because I sent my mom the link already, but
oh wow,
I don't know if she actually put it in order yet.
You double checked? I hope you double checked the link to make sure that it still had the right configuration in it.
Yeah, I did. Of course.
Okay, you get it.
I also instruct her not to change anything, or else it'll mess it up.
You should have told her it will break it.
Yeah.
Because she's not gonna look up how to do all that.
Yeah, she doesn't really care. She can function without a laptop, so. She
can function all on her own.
Yeah. Because she does everything from her phone, so.
Gotcha.
Oh, I know, modern people, man. They're just weird.
Yeah, because we're so old compared to my mother.
No, it's weird because our parents. No. So it's actually strange that you say that, because if you look. Oh shit!
I forgot to put my washing in the laundry. I just remembered. Hang on a second.
All right then. Well, that happened.
I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna turn my camera back on.
Okay.
We'll see if this works.
I haven't seen your avatar in a while. Oh, that's nice.
Because you haven't seen me in a while.
That's true. It's a little framey, but
What was that?
It's a little framey, but I mean.
Is it dropping some frames? Oops.
A little bit. And by a little bit, actually, if I'm being honest, a lot. It's maybe
That's interesting.
2 to 4 frames a second.
Yeah, it is dropping frames really bad. That's really strange. Here, let's see if we can fix it. I've been having this problem with OBS literally just chunking really bad lately. I'm not entirely sure why.
Did you check your video encoder?
I don't know what it should be, but yes,
Hello?
I know that's probably the problem.
Hello? Hello! Okay, perfect.
Hello.
Hi. Sorry we're late.
Oh, no problem. We killed some time. So I guess I can officially begin if you're all ready, except Lily, who had to quickly put her clothes in the washing machine.
And I had to still go to the restroom, which never happened. But you can go ahead and I have headphones. I'm gonna mute myself. I'll be back.
Okay, no problem. Also, I'm just gonna quickly explain that if you're wondering why there's an anime character in the bottom right, he has a program that changes his face and animates him, and it does more. It's weird. But anyway, thank you for joining us. But ladies and gentlemen, this is the beginning of the Game Development Club at San Jose State's podcast, episode number 20. This one's special because, as you noticed, we have the WitchBeam team, the team working behind Unpacking and formerly Assault Android Cactus, because when we did the interview, there was some audio problems, and I profusely apologized and wanted to get them back on because I felt like it didn't go as smoothly as it could have. So I'd like to welcome them. Yeah, so I'd like to welcome them back for the podcast. And today, obviously, we're just going to go with an interview again with them, go over what they're working on, some of their design philosophies, and if we can, we have like a couple of other talking points that we can kind of have like a roundtable discussion on if you guys want to stay for that. If that works for you guys.
Sure.
All right. Awesome. So I guess, first things first, why don't you two introduce yourselves and like just broad overview about what you guys in WitchBeam does.
All right, Tim, you go first.
Okay. I'm Tim. I started working on console titles, PS2 and Xbox, back in like 2004, I think. It was my first games job as a cinematic animator, and worked mostly as animator until I eventually moved around Australia a fair bit, and then eventually quit my job and went indie in 2013 and started WitchBeam to make Assault Android Cactus. And that shipped a couple of years later and has been updating ever since. And when I went indie, I became a lot more multi-rolled. So I'm actually doing a lot of programming these days. And on Unpacking, I'm actually doing all the programming and basically no art. So the metamorphosis is complete.
Come full circle.
What was that, sorry?
You've come full circle.
So I'm Ren. I come more from mobile game development. I used to work at Halfbrick on Jetpector, and Fruit Ninja on their like updates teams. After that, I did a bunch of freelance stuff, and went indie when Tim and I started working on this project together. I'm an artist, and now on this project, I'm also a designer.
Wow. Okay. So actually, I don't think we touched on this in the first interview we did, but you both come from mobile backgrounds. Does that mean that Unpacking might come to? Oh no, I mean working on mobile games. I mean.
Just me.
Oh, it's just you?
It comes from consoles.
Oh, I'm sorry. Well, Switch is mobile technically now. I mean, that kind of counts. Do you think there would be a chance that Unpacking would work on mobile? Because I feel like it would be a nice kind of game to play whenever, right? And like on the train or something?
Well, it's not an idle game, it's a story-driven game.
That's true. But I mean like
Yeah.
But it could work pretty well as a premium title.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I think it would work pretty well on tablets where you've got enough room to see the pixel art. I think on phones it'd be a bit trickier just because you've got to worry about zooming in or something like that to make it playable. Otherwise it's going to be a little bit bitsy. But yeah, it makes sense. A lot of people that have seen the game have been like, "Oh, I want the mobile version of that." So.
Yeah.
So what is so when you guys are going to events and presenting, what is your philosophy, or how do you gauge play testing and see what works and what doesn't work for people when they're trying out Unpacking?
I mean, so like with Cactus before this and then Unpacking, like mostly I'm just kind of watching for trends and patterns. Any one person can have like a weird reaction to something and you can be like, well, what's with that guy? But if you notice that things tend to be reoccurring or things resonate, that's the other thing. If someone says something and it seems really obvious in hindsight, then that's probably a decent insight.
Yeah. I'd say I especially watch out for things that frustrate players. So I mean, people having a positive reaction is great, and it's good to see, and it definitely matters. But if players are getting stuck, or if they're getting frustrated, or even angry, that's the things that I especially pay attention to.
A big part of it is also reconciling that with what you want the game to do. So if someone's all like, "Oh, this is taking me some time to set up my shelf the way I want it to," you might say, well, actually, that's as designed. We want you to take the time to have to arrange something. But if someone says, this is breaking my sense of being in a kitchen because I can't place this object the way I want it to, then you might go, oh, okay, actually, that is a problem that we need to look at because it's not really intended. So a lot of it comes down to like what you're making and how people are reacting to it, I guess.
So when let's roll back a bit to I guess I have a question specifically for Assault Android Cactus. When you were testing out that game, what kind of guided the direction that the game went in terms of all the characters, kind of the not stage selects, but like the progression of the game and all that? Was that part of I guess what parts of that game would you say primarily came from like testing it with people? Like what mechanics specifically were maybe changed or something along those lines?
Yeah, so Cactus, a lot of because it's got a difficulty curve, and like maintaining that across the whole game was a huge design task. You know, it's very traditional video game in that sense. If a level's too hard or too easy at the wrong spot, it's going to turn people off. And if you drew it out as a graph, it would basically be a line that goes up, peaks at the boss, drops down a little bit, and then keeps going to the next world. So you have this kind of sawtooth design. And so a lot of that was, we made our best guess, and we showed it to people, and we saw how they reacted. Like, you set up a boss, you play it a bunch of times, you learn the boss, and then you show it to someone who hasn't played that particular boss before, and they might just get absolutely smashed by a phase that you didn't think was a problem because they're either misunderstanding it, or it's just too hard, or you internalize the difficulty because that's what you do as a game developer, always make things too hard. And then it's just like going back and the interesting thing for Cactus, this is less relevant for Unpacking because it doesn't have the high skill kind of floor. The interesting thing about Cactus was that when you realize that you need to make something harder or easier, the tricky thing is figuring, especially when you have a bunch of different characters that respond in the game a different way, is figuring out what does easier mean. Because you can always reduce hit points, you can always make hitboxes bigger, you can always reduce complexity. But like, which one? You've got all these levers, and it's going, okay, what problem are people actually hitting here? Versus, you know, so a lot of the times it's a presentation thing. Like someone doesn't perceive the way to continue forwards. Versus, yeah.
I think my favorite anecdote of yours about adjusting difficulty on something in Cactus is in Medulla, where Sean told you.
So was she the one with the rockets?
No, Medulla, the last boss of the game, the final.
Oh, the one you might or might not unlock. Yeah.
Oh no, not the character, the boss, the end boss.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so when we were, because working on that, it's this big finale of the game, and it was, you know, very important to make sure that this was both really challenging, but also like felt right for players. And one of my business partner's brother was playing the game a lot and giving us a lot of feedback. And his feedback was the final phase of the boss was too hard. It was just too hard. It was like, and so we were reducing the difficulty. We were rebalancing things. He's just going, it's just too hard, just way too hard. And eventually we realized that he was using Coral, the character with the shotgun and the plasma field, to effectively cheese his way through most of the boss fight and just get to the last phase where he would then fail. And so our solution, once we figured out this was happening, was to make the first part of the boss fight harder for Coral, so he could never get to the end of the boss fight and complain that it was too hard. And this effectively fixed the problem because we actually wanted the difficulty. He was saying there's this big difficulty spike at the end of the battle, but like there wasn't supposed to be. It was just supposed to be grueling the whole way through, and he needed to step up. And so in that case, we found the paradoxical solution was we needed to make the early part of the battle harder to fix it, and it worked a treat. I mean, you never ever get anyone complaining on Steam about it.
Oh, that's good.
We totally get people complaining on Steam about it.
So I guess a question for Ren then. When you're designing Unpacking, what are some of the things that you're doing to maybe the art or the UI to help guide players so that they don't get frustrated when they play?
Okay, so UI we've actually barely touched on so far in the game. Like I'm doing some very early UI mockups right now. The only like UI I'd say we've done in the game so far is a sort of tutorialization of the right clicking. So you right click to rotate objects. So that's something that we like designed very specifically. So like that's the one thing that we noticed players don't intuitively understand about the game, that you can right click to rotate. So when they pick up an object that has like basically the width and the depth,
non-symmetrical.
Yeah, it's like a non-symmetrical object, like an elongated object. When the first time they pull out an object like that, we wait a little bit and then bring out, like, to see if they figure it out on their own, and then if they don't, we bring up the prompt that has like a little picture of a computer mouse and a little rectangular shape and like a box, like an elongated box, and it shows like right click and shows the box turn, and it's like that went through like a few iterations to get it just right. So like again, the whole thing of waiting to see if they figure it out on their own first, and also putting like a delay between the clicking on the button and seeing the object rotate, things like that. Something we want to do specifically, something I want to do with this feature like a bit later, is that it's not like just in the corner, but that it comes up like right next to your cursor, because right now some people still don't notice that, even though it's like big and red. But it would be like more noticeable if it's like exactly where you're already looking. So once we get the chance, we would like to implement it a bit better. So that's like on the UI side, I'd say. What was the question again about like the items in the rooms?
Yeah, if there's anything specific that you tried to do to hint the player, maybe they can place it here or something like to fit it.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, we do have our what's it called? Our validation system where we tell people, no, you can't leave that there. But some of it has to be just kind of intuitive. So like if we tell them you can't leave that there, it needs to be the sort of thing where they look at it and they go, oh, okay, that makes sense. It's not like, why can't I leave that there? But I'd say, for example, we've got this object, which is the child's diary in the kids' room. And if you put it anywhere except for her desk drawer, the game's like not happy. And pretty much everyone understands as soon as they like notice it is red and try to place a couple of places, they're like, oh, okay, and they like open the drawer and put it there.
I think one of the interesting things about Unpacking is we're leveraging a lot of people's real-world understanding of objects. So you look at a surface and you go, that object can be placed on that surface because it could be. That cupboard can be opened because it's a cupboard and it could be. And it's kind of a cool place to start with, because we do get to tap into all of this common imagery. And so we can make a lot of it is just making sure that the player recognizes things that are already familiar with them, and then like that does a lot of the heavy lifting for us. And so fortunately it puts it back on the art, because the art has to be really clear. You pick up an object, you have to understand that, oh, this is an ice cream scoop, okay, maybe it goes in the drawer rather than on top of the fridge, because that would be a weird place to put it. And so like there's already a lot of kind of cultural things that are kind of working in our favor.
Yeah. I'd say a thing I tried doing, which I don't think was super successful in communicating to a player that they can put something in a particular spot, is we've got towels in the kitchen. There's 4 of them, and in the drawer you can only fit 3. And originally you could only put them in the drawer. So when they don't fit in the drawer, like the stack of 3 doesn't fit, you go, well, where do I put the last one? And then the idea is the player thinks, oh, I hang it up. But that didn't work quite that well. A lot of people just now stack the towels like on a shelf or something. So we're still kind of trying to figure out how to communicate to players better that they can use the hooks. Some of it is also a matter of like teaching them that in earlier levels, where it's something that's even more obvious and a hook that's even more obvious, like towels in the bathroom. And hopefully once they've hung up towels in the bathroom in an earlier stage, they'll be like, oh yeah, I can hang up towels in the kitchen too.
So you had mentioned in the last interview visual storytelling through looking through what this person was unpacking and bringing into the new home. Are there any things that you've, obviously you don't want to spoil what you've been working on since then, but maybe something that you've iterated on since then, or maybe just kind of explain to us that again?
I'd say we haven't been doing a lot of that right now. Like we've I guess. So we started putting together the second stage of the game, which is the college dorm room, and in that one we've continued to like flesh out the character, what she's like. So like we've designed, like we've decided what clothes she owns and like how that reflects her personality and like her insecurities and what she's into. We've also like decided, you know, like which DVDs she has, she owns at this point in her life, and what toys she kept with her from childhood, that sort of thing. But I wouldn't say that anything big has changed narrative-wise so far.
It muted. So actually, really quickly, Lily or Andrew, did you guys have a question, or should I keep going on my list?
I had. Oh, go ahead, Lily.
No, sorry, you go ahead first.
I was just gonna ask a question. You were mentioning how like if you have a thing like covered, you want to make sure that the player like can actually put stuff in it. Does that mean that you have to be very, very careful about kind of the equivalent of feature creep for you in a certain way is how many objects you put that could potentially be expected to be interacted with?
The objects are kind of planned in advance, right? Like so there's like two kinds of things in the game. There's like environments and then there's items. So literally every item can be interacted with. And it's a matter of like how many items we design per room. But that's kind of decided in the stage where we're like planning out the design of the environment first, because we decide like how many spaces you've got to put things, and then we fill up those spaces. But we always also leave some space empty, because we found like if we pack it so that you had to like fill it up pretty much exactly, people find it very, very hard. So like we've had people tell us, oh, like I've played the kitchen room and it seems like it's got just enough space to fit all these items, and I'm like, actually it's got space to fit a lot more, but it doesn't look like it.
Yeah, like the figuring out the items in a room, it seems to be so far. Because we've done a couple now. We've done the kitchen as a proof of concept, and then we're kind of starting to work on the regular levels. And it's an iteration between creating enough storage space for items to go and creating items that go in those storage spaces. So if you create a shelf because it feels like there should be a shelf there, then things have to go on that shelf. But also if you go, well, we need these items because they're part of the storytelling, or that they should be present here, then you need to make sure there's enough storage space for that. And there's definitely going to be back and forth, especially in the later levels where we have some constraints that are going to be, you know, we'll want certain things in the game and certain things not in the game.
Yeah, when I noticed sometimes, like I noticed there's more space than we need. So like in the college dorm room, we had 3 shelves, and they were all 3 spaces deep. And we were like, this is a lot of space. This is space for a lot of items. This is a bit too much. So we cut them so they're just too deep now. So that's how we deal with like, oh, there's too many objects. We make less space generally.
That one also helped because the shelves because there were 3 squares deep basically. They were doing a lot of cover, like they were covering objects below them as well.
Yeah.
So by shaving them back to smaller, this is an interesting thing actually we realized when we were planning the kitchen, is that we don't want to put everything in cupboards, because then you end up closing the doors and you end up with no items on display, and that kind of defeats the purpose of the game. So even though in real life it's very normal to put everything away so it's basically concealed and you know it's there, in our game we actually want to keep things on display as much as possible. So it's kind of an interesting design conceit.
Yeah, so most cupboards have been replaced with shelves, like in the kitchen especially.
That's an interesting design choice. I like that.
Yeah, because it's like if you fill it up and then you close all the cupboards and you're like, well, what did I just do? Like,
Yeah, I think it also it's nice because as the player you have the ability to actually see what you've been doing. Like
yeah, exactly. That's what I mean.
Yeah.
And it's important to remember that like even though we're emulating a realistic space, games are not like realism. We're not trying to be hyper realistic.
Yeah.
Same way that cactus levels never have doors to leave them. we don't have all kinds of things because we want to make the scene look
like
nice.
we mentioned in the interview with you guys the other time that like not a single person has mentioned like, wait, where does the food go in this kitchen? There's no pantry. There's a fridge that you can't open because of like design constraints, and there's no pantry. So all the shelves are meant to be filled with your stuff. So the conceit is like, well, maybe the pantry is on another wall. But now we're designing, but nobody's even noticed. Like nobody has said, "Oh, I guess the pantry's on the other wall." Nobody even knows that there isn't a pantry. We're currently building a little kitchenette for the dorm room, and like in that one, it's probably going to be very obvious that there's no room for anything else on any other wall. But I still don't expect it to be an issue.
Lily, you had a question?
No, I did not yet.
Oh, okay. So Ren, when you're making the art for the game, what specifically what is your process for making the art, and how does that play into the narrative you're trying to tell with Unpacking?
Okay, so first we block out. First we design the rooms, so it's just like a very basic sort of wireframe of what the room should look like. It's all kind of blocks, and then I take that into Unity, and with the tools that Tim's built, I populate the room with objects. Oh, before that, I also kind of define what the placeable surfaces are, like where you can leave stuff. Not just where you can put things, but the places where we consider like the valid spot for the item. And then I just kind of block out all the items as if I'm like solving the level at the same time. So everything has kind of an intended place that it goes to.
So object start is kind of basically 3D blocks. It can be like a 2x2 or 4x3 or
like 4x3x2, like that sort of thing. So I block them out like this, and then I take all of these blocked objects and put them back into Sprite, which is the program I'm using to do all the art for the game. It's the pixel art program. So I bring them back in there and place them around in the environment, like in my Sprite file, and just go object by object and draw them. But when I define the blocked items, I also kind of define exactly what each one is. So it's like it's got a little label on it. So like this one's a teddy bear and this one's a tape deck. And so I arrange them all in like layers and just start making the items one by one. And then we can we export the art and take it back into Unity.
It's interesting because the size and the way the objects can be placed and configured on a shelf gives them a lot of actually gives them some of the personality, because a large object may not fit in some small shelf parts, but can fit in other ways. So if you want an object to feel different to a different object, having different dimensions is really important, because otherwise, if you just have a bunch of 2x2x2s, they're all interchangeable from a packing point of view and from how you arrange them on the shelf. But if you have one that's skinnier, one that's a bit taller, suddenly it becomes interesting. You go, okay, that one can fit at the end of the shelf. Oh, I've got enough space okay, I can put the toy over here.
Yeah, it like allows for real life Tetrising.
Yeah. So with the art, it's good for both the variety to have a mix of shapes and sizes, and also for the game, it's really important to have that mix of shapes and sizes.
Yeah, it's important to us that the items are readable and people understand them, and like definitely a block with just a name on it doesn't like playing with that doesn't feel like it feels when you play with things that you can just look at them and be like, oh yeah, that's a blah. But the game is essentially like playable from the point that we have box objects, so that we know that it's like this is a solvable puzzle, and we know like all of the objects that the character owns at this stage in her life.
So Tim, you mentioned that there was Ren mentioned that you had developed a specific tool to import assets or something like that for Unity. Was there something limiting about Unity's 2D editor, or was it something that just worked better?
Oh, yeah. So I feel like the thing with Unity is that like you're always going to need tools and automation stuff. Like Unity is a really good sandbox, but in fact, the thing I like about Unity the most is actually that it feels gameplay agnostic, where it doesn't have a set way of how your game should work, which I think is a really important thing, because if you're effectively plugging things in to make a racing game or a first-person shooter or something like that, then you're kind of more like modding than game developing. A lot of the interesting game design decisions come from deciding how things are going to work, even sometimes at a fairly base level. So for instance, like Unity has really good sprite tools, and we can render all the sprites, everything's cut up, but like it doesn't innately have a concept of a 3D grid, and it certainly doesn't have our concept of a 3D grid.
Yeah, like an isometric grid that works like in 2D, because it's not. Like, it's not even real 3D.
Like there's ways if you're building a 2D isometric game, there's tools in Unity to help you build a world faster. But we're not doing the simple case of like having a tree that a character can move behind. We have like shelves and doors and drawers that can be pulled out, and objects can be stacked underneath them. It's a really complicated special case that that unpacking is specific to unpacking. And so we're always going to need a lot of tools to handle stuff like that.
Yeah, specifically what Tim's tools do for like building the objects is you essentially tell it how many squares deep you want the objects to be, how many squares wide, how many squares tall, and you attach a name to it, and it puts it like into the level in real time, like you're doing this in play mode. So it's very, very useful. I can just like make objects, put them right in the level, and then also be like, actually, I'm not sure about that one, and select it and edit it, and yeah, this is all in real time, and it all gets saved. So Unity doesn't have anything that can do that, because that's like such a specific requirement.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the way I think about tools is that it's always good to just do things manually first to figure out what you need to do. In our case, like, how many items does the kitchen have? Unique items.
Unique items. I want to say 70.
Okay.
Roughly. Yeah.
So I think for the most, if not all, of the kitchen items were made manually by assembling prefabs. So you drag out, and I think I made a tool at some point. At first, you drag out some artwork for the item, you drag out its shadow, you'd arrange it correctly, and you save it as a prefab. And you go, there you go, got a new item. You make another item, make it as a prefab. There's all these steps you have to do, tagging it as an item as it's tagged, making sure the art is positioned in the hierarchy correctly so the prefab works the way you want it to, linking all the items and stuff like that.
Defining the dimensions and that.
Yeah. I mean, that's kind of not the big kind of task. It's like the manual stuff of building, like positioning the art under a game object so it can be moved up and down when you're placing an object. All this manual stuff that's done the same way every single time. So quickly, I had a script that you'd click on a piece of art and click on a shadow, and it would create the prefab for you. So you've got something to go. And that's how we made most of the kitchen items. But even that process is a bit slow. So the tool I've made is just kind of automating that. So you can drag in a piece of art. It goes, well, is there a matching shadow based on this file name? And it goes and has a look for it. If it can find it, it matches it to it. And then you can set the size of it, and you can see visually whether the balance is actually fitting the balance correctly. And then you go and make prefab. And the reason why we're doing that is speed, and because we're going to have hundreds and hundreds of items by the end of the game. And having to do them manually would be a disaster. And so it's kind of, the tools is all about figuring out what you're doing over and over again that could be automated, and automating it.
Do you mind if I ask you a quick question about tooling as well?
Yeah.
Okay. So I was sorry. So you said you're using Unity, and I'm kind of curious. Like I'm also working on a project in Unity, and I try to update with each version, like each dot version. I'm curious. Do you keep? Do you freeze your version, so to speak? Have you chosen one version that you're working with for the entire project, or are you updating as you go?
So with my experience with characters, it's a mix. So if you don't it's good to freeze on a version and just kind of keep working on that, because doing updates whenever they release a new update is really time consuming and distracting. Being on the bleeding edge means you spend all your time dealing with like, oh wow, they finally added this feature, and then it doesn't work right because it's Unity and of course it doesn't. And like, it's a bit of ultimately it's a distraction. It's better to update, but at the same time, if you don't update and you get left behind with versions, eventually you run into a case where you do need to update and everything breaks. So you want to be able to periodically update, but also not catch every dot point release, because that's just mind-numbing. So at the moment, I think for Unpacking, what version are we on?
I forget. Let's check
the hub.
Yeah.
It will tell you.
Let's find out.
So the other thing is making sure the team members are on the same version of Unity, because otherwise you get.
Oh no.
Yeah.
There it is.
Hey, Unity Hub.
It's very slow. Here we go.
Okay, so Unpacking is frozen on 2017.4 at the moment. For various reasons. At some point, we'll update. Probably jump straight to 2019 through 2018.
Well, the thing is as well that I've noticed, like with you making updates to Cactus and stuff, like you have to update to later Unity versions sometimes when it comes to consoles.
Oh yeah. So the main thing with Cactus, and where I picked up this habit from, the main thing dictating when you update ended up being console development, because with consoles, the Unity would be fixing specific problems and only in specific versions. So you might have a memory leak that is literally in one dot version and is fixed the next one, and you have some other issue that's in this other version. So the updating becomes very calculated. And also there's a bunch of cutoff things where they expose a feature, but it's only available in this version. So you have to go to that version, even if it was annoying, because you're using a system that's no longer easily usable. There was a dot version where they broke lights on PS4, for instance.
Oh god.
Yeah, they broke the ability to turn off, like, enable set false. And it was really weird for the whole version. It was just like that, and you had to wait until because I needed that because they added something else that I needed. But I needed to wait until they fixed lights again.
I thought there was also like a reason where like basically you can't have too old a version if you wanted to release on.
Oh yeah. So it's the consoles match Unity versions to SDKs. So you end up having to make some certain decisions, not based on what version of Unity you'd like to use, but what version of Unity you can use. And so I guess it gets better to get just used to being able to work on a specific version. But yeah, rambling. Yeah.
No, not rambling at all. That's actually very, very good advice. I've not done console release, so it's interesting. Yeah, I mean, I actually I've been keeping up with every dot release, and I recently tried to update from 2018.3 to 2019.1, and it lost every reference. And I'm like, wow. So basically, you rebuild the entire game. So I'm like, I'm staying on 2018. I'm glad I use version control.
So the other thing is, like, I never touch beta versions because beta versions, and I also steer clear of major updates for a few versions, because that's when they tend to work out their worst bugs. And like, it's really good if you're excited about jumping in and like testing out new lighting models and stuff like that. But if you're trying to upgrade a project, I found in my experience it's really, really dangerous to hit those early versions. Like, let 2019 swim a bit and kind of work out the biggest issues before you jump to it, and you'll have a better time, in my experience. But yeah.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
So another thing that I kind of wanted to touch on, since we kind of had a discussion about it on the podcast before, is, let me just ask you the simple question of what genre would you put Unpacking in?
Do you know what? Recently, Bit Summit asked me that question.
Oh, really?
We're going to be at Bit Summit, right? And I had to fill out a little form for the information for the website. And out of their options, we matched puzzle and other. Yeah, that's what it says now for us on the Bit Summit website. But
that's our official genre.
Is it a genre?
It's a little bit puzzle. So more seriously, it's a little bit puzzle and a bit like it's let's say like it's a narrative game. It's if you consider it a category, a Zen game. I'd say it's pretty casual. Like these are various like labels that I can stick onto Unpacking as a game.
Yeah, casual is a weird one because it hits multiple things it describes, and some of them
Tetris is
are
casual. Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's like it's such a wide. That was the thing that we were kind of getting at. Like genres now are just so wide that sometimes it doesn't describe games that much anymore. It's
yeah. I
It's
think
funny.
sorry, you go.
No, I was just gonna say, like, I agree with that thought too, because it's like it seems like games, everyone wants to fit them into a genre, and then at the same time, it's becoming less and less relevant to do so, because people are breaking the mold more and more.
The thing with genres is like they're labels, and they should be used when they're useful. That they're like it's kind of like when you label yourself as a person too, right? Like you use labels because they're useful to describe who you are, or in this game, like what the game is. But if it becomes like you're essentially just sticking the label on so that you have a more specific definition, but it's not actually like the correct definition for you, then you're better off like just forgoing the label.
Yeah, I mean, genres are interesting, and labels in general, I think, because sometimes it's useful to, as a guiding principle. You know, if you go, well, look, we're making a puzzle game, so we're not chasing these other things. It kind of gets back to like design pillars and things like that, where I think the important thing about picking a pillar or picking something that defines your game is also being able to pick what your game isn't. Because if you're not, you're maybe just doing that thing where you just grab things off the shelf and go, yeah, we're all the things. We're we're action, adventure. Yeah, we're that. We're RPG. Like sometimes making the decision to say we are not an RPG is the best thing like an adventure game could do, because it means something. You go, okay, we've got stats. No, we're getting rid of that. We're not doing that. And saying, yeah.
Yeah. Also, just gonna touch on like a sort of pet peeve of mine when people have the descriptions of their games as basically a list of genres. Like it's an action adventure RPG with shooter elements, and it's like, first of all, it's alienated anyone who's not like savvy about like what these labels mean. And second, it's like you're not making me think that there's anything special about your game. You're like telling me what categories it fits into, but you're not actually telling me why I should want to play your game.
Yeah. No, I think you hit the nail on the head. Honestly, it's just, even like I think Steam's trying to do stuff with it too, where people can like add tags to games now.
It's pretty cool.
Oh, that was the other. Which platform? So you mentioned consoles, but which platform? So I'm assuming Unpacking is probably just going to be on Steam, I guess, or I guess Unreal Store maybe, or.
Yes, I mean, so the main version is the PC, like the PC as in Windows, OS X, probably Linux, as a kind of main development platform. We think a mobile version would make sense. I think a Switch version maybe makes sense as the form factor.
I will buy it twice if you put it on the Switch.
And ideas. And the cool thing is, as an indie developer, we now know that these things are open to us. Like, I literally put code on a Switch, and we have a path there, and before it wasn't really an option.
Yeah, and like Tim did all the ports for Assault Android Cactus himself, so we actually have the dev kits for doing this stuff.
Yeah, so it's definitely like one of those things. Like it's a possibility. Whether that'll pan out, it's hard to say. The only thing we know for sure is we want to do the PC version of the mouse. But yeah, and it's like with Cactus, we ended up porting that to PS4, Xbox One, Switch, and we also kind of licensed one that got released in China on a weird micro console that fizzled out. But yeah.
So I was checking. So I follow at Unpacking a Life on Twitter, by the way, and I think I remember a while ago you guys tweeted out like an object creator or something like that.
That was the object tool.
Yeah, that's the thing I was trying to describe earlier. It's a lot easier to understand when you see it, like in that GIF. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Oh, okay. I thought that was for. I thought like that was in the game, so players could make art. Oh, okay.
Oh no, that's for us.
Okay, yeah. Okay, that's great.
Oh, that's actually that's an interesting idea, though. I'm definitely scope creep, though.
Yeah.
But having
Yeah.
like players be able to make their own puzzles and share them would be neat.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely been brought up as an option for like maybe something we could do later. But again, it's like it depends on if it feels right. It depends on if the scope is appropriate for us. Like we are a very small team.
I mean, a lot of it is actually like if the tools continue to evolve and become like good enough, then maybe eventually they could be public-facing tools. In which case, that tends to roll into modding support. But that's like I think that like it's funny when I've worked on games before, you often have to make a level editor because you have specific requirements to set up enemy waves or set up like level layouts. And when someone sees a level editor in game, even though it's actually quite rough and it's designed for developers, often they'll say, "Oh, cool! So you're going to add level making support?" Yeah. You're like, "Why? No, this is literally to build the game with. This has got too many sharp edges to ever like give to a user." But I mean, it's where modding support comes from. Like, eventually, you might look at your tools and go, "Oh, we've made something good enough that we could actually let somebody else play with them without destroying their computer."
Yeah, that's basically it. Like when you're making a game, if it's not like an incredibly simple game, like if it has any level of complexity, then you're gonna need to have tools for designing it. And like if you're, say, a sole developer and you're a programmer, then maybe like everything is hard coded in your game, but like most likely you're also working with a designer and you need to make tools that someone who's not a programmer can use. So this is the case like with me and Tim. But I think even if you are a sole developer who's a programmer, you're going to build some tools.
Yeah, I see. I have this whole thing that's like because I'm multidisciplined now, and especially on Cactus, I was doing art, programming, different like animation, setting ups, like across all
some design.
Yeah, a lot of design across a lot of different disciplines, and different times of day, I had a different headspace for the different roles. Like I could do art in the afternoon and evening, but I could only do certain programming straight first thing in the morning when I was like when my brain was happy for it. I could fix up code like mid-morning to afternoon kind of thing. Like there were different points where like I could handle different tasks. And when I think about tools, that's the other thing. Sometimes you can remember everything you have to do to set something up. But other times you're going to forget that. Like, do you remember that it's like a 0.1 interval between these objects, and if you set it up wrong, it renders wrong? I don't want to remember that. I want to have a button that I press, and I wrote the code like some time ago, and it just sorts it out. And so a lot of the tools are just for me, so I don't have to remember and painstakingly get things right every single time. In fact, I like making tools like error-proof and having messages that pop up go, "Do you really mean to delete this prefab?" or something like that? Because what if I'm using them in like, late into the evening, or I'm just having a bad day and I don't know what I'm making mistakes. The people that are going to use my tool are not just other people, it's also me, but in different headspace.
So, sorry, you kind of touched on a little.
I was just going to ask if Lily's got any questions, because Lily, you haven't asked anything yet. Oh, sorry, you're muted.
Oh, there we go. I was wondering, like, for each, I know you mentioned that for the kitchen that there isn't any food because it'd be complicated, and plus there's just not enough space. But could that be possible someday? If you could try fitting food into it, because like maybe like I know it's about like unpacking, like moving into a new place, and like it's the story's driven that way. But like maybe there's like bonus levels of like you have to like fit in all the food, and like it keeps like it retains all the choices you made with unpacking all the kitchen stuff. So you have to like, oh shoot, like I put dishes here, I can't put like this box of marshmallows I just got over here. I have to put them over. I don't know, just a little bonus level that retains like the player's choices. So like they have to really think about what they're putting where. I don't know, something like that.
I mean, it's a very cute idea, but I think it's a bit of a different game than what we've got planned. So first of all, like retaining players' choices is something that we are trying to avoid for the most part. There's going to be one level where we'll be doing that, but generally the game doesn't retain any player choices.
I see.
Yeah, and it's like the focus of our story is specifically on the moves, and like we don't want to take away from that by like adding in more elements that are not like absolutely like driving the core principles of the game. So like we've got like the game is trying to tell a specific story, right? And you can add a lot of things to it, like not just a story, sorry, like also convey a specific idea, and kind of it's a relatively small scope, and it's very like how would you describe it? Like it's very contained.
Yeah.
And anytime you add a new element to it, you have to ask, what is this contributing to the game? Like, is this helping drive the game in the direction that we want it, or is this kind of distracting from the main thing? So like, can I talk about Jeff's headphone suggestion thing?
Yeah, I mean, it's a little bit complicated to explain that same thing.
Sure. Well, basically, I'll see if I can make it simple. Our sound guy was asking if maybe we could add an option to put on headphones, like for the character to at some point find headphones in the game and put on headphones and like have a whole system related to that. And we're like, well, we don't actually have any function in the game that lets you take an object and like put it on yourself. And it's like, and he was like really keen on this because he had some really cool ideas of what to do with this, but it just kind of doesn't mesh with the concept of the game, because it suddenly like introduces all of these new elements for essentially like a payoff that's just kind of like a nice thing to have and not something that contributes to what the game is trying to convey.
Yeah, the interesting one about that case as well is when you're building a game, you end up with a series of metaphors that hopefully the player understands their affordance in the game. Right? You know, if you're a first-person shooter, you understand you can look and you can put bullets somewhere. If you're an unpacking, you understand that you can take an item from a box and put it on a surface. So the idea that you can take an item from a box and put it on yourself is an idea that's otherwise not explored in the game, and it kind of opens that can of worms where you say, okay, if you can take a Walkman with headphones and put them on your character. First of all, we've acknowledged the character, which we kind of haven't. It's like a ghost character up until this point.
Yeah.
But now
it's more of a point and click perspective, so I don't know how that would work.
Yeah.
So now the ghost can wear headphones, which is kind of an interesting escalation.
Yeah, and like I want to make clear that like we're not literally saying it's a ghost, but just kind of like what we've been jokingly calling it, like the unpacking ghost, you know, because it's like you're not exactly the character. Like you're supposedly playing this character who's the girl who's moving house, but in reality, like you don't know the things she knows, and it kind of feels like more like you're this voyeuristic other entity.
Helpful unpacking ghost.
Yeah. So we're leaving it very undefined, and then having the ghost wear things is confusing that.
That's like the player has a point of view, like they're looking to the screen, but we're not really defining what they are. We're just saying objects come out of the box, can be placed on things. Like a hat comes out of the box, can you put the hat on? You could put the headphones on. Like it suddenly starts becoming, and like what button is that? We've already got right click switches the hat switches the object around. Like,
right, the game would really become more about like, oh, what's this stuff do, instead of actually putting stuff away.
Yeah, and it's kind of like, is this contributing to the general like concept of the game of unpacking things, of telling the story of the character, of like progressing through time? It's like it's not doing any of those things. It's something that would be fun to interact with, but it's just like maybe that could go in another game, you know? Yeah. Not every idea needs to go in this game.
Meanwhile, something like having a set of drawers that you can open up each drawer of them, and you can have an object underneath the drawer, and you can place an object in the drawer and shut it and have stacked objects in the drawer, is actually much more complicated technically than having something like the character is now wearing headphones and we're playing audio and doing all this kind of stuff. Like implementing the headphone solution stuff wouldn't have actually been that technically challenging compared to things like multiple drawers stacked on top of each other. But multiple drawers stacked on top of each other is a metaphor that absolutely makes sense in unpacking a kitchen. And so it kind of needs to be in there for believability. It makes the game much more interesting to have that. Well, the headphone thing is like, if you leave it out of the game completely, it probably won't feel weird. People like the food pantry, people won't call it out because and that's a big thing about scope and trying to keep things focused.
Yeah. Yeah, that's essentially the thing, that not every idea that you have, even if it's a really cool idea, needs to go in the game that you are making right now. Like you can make later games with these ideas, or you can like keep it on the back burner, or maybe they'll never fit into a game that you're working on. But your game needs to be focused and be about a thing and like be achievable. So with Unpacking from the very start, like we designed this game to fit our skill set and to fit our kind of scope that we think is achievable for us. Even then, it ended up being like a lot bigger than we expected. But it's like it's a relatively contained concept.
Makes sense.
All right. Well, were there any last minute questions from Lily or Andrew?
I'm good. Thank you for answering so many great questions.
Yeah, thank you for hanging out with us again after the first recording.
Yeah.
Have fun at Bit Summit. Anything you guys want to mention about the game? Potentially, I know you said 2020, maybe even later as a release date.
Like late 2020 is about when we.
Fingers crossed.
Yeah, fingers crossed. Yeah, like our next show is like I said, Bit Summit on the 1st and 2nd of June in Kyoto in Japan.
Oh wow!
If anyone listening is there or like going there, we'll be there.
All right, sounds like fun.
Just in case.
Yeah. You never know. I mean, Japan's a good vacation spot.
Yeah.
So thank you, WitchBeam, Ren, and Tim, for joining us on the podcast today. Thank you for anyone watching, and we will see you all next time.
See ya.
Thank you.
Yeah.